You know that VAUDE has been working towards climate neutrality for many years. This is our long-standing history, basically, to become a climate neutral company with climate neutral products. And our climate strategy is very ambitious for an outdoor brand, very, very ambitious, and it is science-based. That is also worthwhile mentioning because there is many climate commitments out there in outdoor business and with our competitors, but by far not all of them are science-based. There's a lot of greenwashing out there as well. And also what is really important is that our climate commitment is also very robustly financed. These days, of course, it is also something a company needs to plan very well, because it is a lot of money involved, not only for paying for the offsetting of all the emissions we cannot avoid yet, but of course, even more important, all the measures, all the projects we want to do to reduce emissions. In the end, that's our goal. We can have all our products labeled as climate neutral products, which, as you know, is the case since 2022. By far, the most emissions at VAUDE in our entire company occur in our supply chain. Again, at last sales meeting, I explained in very great detail about this, but just for you to remember, the most emissions occur in material production. That is what Bert's team is in charge of, basically the selection of what materials we make our products from, and in energy consumption during the material production. This is the two very most important parts of our supply chain where by far the most emissions occur. Everything else, including, for example, merchandise logistics, you see that little gray part in the circle, on the top of the circle, that is a very small portion only. So even shipping, even flying part of the products from Asia over here, that is only a very small portion. Many consumers think, or retailers or even media think that merchandise logistics, shipping all the products over here from Asia makes up for so many emissions, but that's actually not true in the entire product life cycle. It's just a small portion. That's why we focus not on logistics, but on energy consumption during material production and on material mix. This is why we need to reduce emissions in these two aspects so urgently and so drastically, in material mix emissions and in the emissions that occur when the materials are produced by the energy that is used. At the same time, this is very, very challenging. And we know that even in Europe, even in Germany, it is so difficult to phase out of fossil fuels. Even over here, but it is at least as difficult to get away from fossil fuels like coal and oil or gas, fossil gas in Asia, in our production countries. Even though the pressure, as you know, is getting higher and higher, not only by Fridays for Future and by all the scientific need to reduce climate change, but also in the light of the war in Ukraine. As you know, we all feel how frustrating it is that we cannot just cut off fossil fuels from Russia to increase the pressure. But it is just too difficult currently. I'm saying this because I want to illustrate how challenging it is to reduce emissions from energy consumption in our supply chain. But it is very, very important. Our focus is to reduce emissions. This is important to always repeat and to keep in mind also when you talk to customers. The focus is to reduce emissions. The focus is not to compensate the rest of emissions we cannot avoid yet. But because it's also important, because we're too slow, because the challenge, the problems to reduce all the emissions are just too big currently, we also need to offset, to compensate emissions that we cannot avoid yet. That is for a period of time until it is possible to get rid of all the emissions. And as you have heard before, we have a very nice climate compensation project together with My Climate in Vietnam, where we avoid emissions in the same amount as we are responsible for in our supply chain.